Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and you join me here. We're currently in the little church in Concord in Fallout 4. So, the final part of Emmy's Wasteland Survival Guide, we're going to talk about religion and faith. So, what do you believe in? Religion and faith might not sound like an important thing for survival, but a lot of people having something to believe in can be a lifeline for them. A personal example is that my grandfather was a prisoner of war during the Second World War and always said that his faith was what helped him get through the ordeal and everything that happened. Of course, it's not for everyone. There's plenty of atheists and agnostics and people that, have different beliefs. And in the Fallout universe, it's the same, and there's even some new religions that are emerging in the aftermath of the end of the world. A crisis can cause people to lose faith as well, think, why would, our deity let this happen? Why did bad things happen to good people? That kind of thing. So having a massive world-changing event like this could cause a lot of people to lose their faith, but there are also people that just don't believe in anything and never have, and that's okay. There's no judgment here. I've always believed in freedom of religion, just that you can't use your religion to dictate what I can or cannot do. That's kind of the way I tend to approach these things, because I know it can be a bit of a divisive topic, so we're going to keep things respectful and understand that people have different beliefs and for different reasons, and that's okay. So, got that? Great, let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the pre-war world religions. So it's safe to assume that probably the majority religion of pre-war North America was Christianity and all its various denominations, but other faiths were definitely present in significant numbers. And indeed, that was partly what the Vault 15 experiment was based on. So some of the original founders of Shady Sands, and therefore the NCR that came from Vault 15, had Hindu, Buddhist and Sikh backgrounds. So that was the experiment, if you remember, of Vault 15, was to put a bunch of different people that had very different religious beliefs, political standpoints and all that kind of thing together to see what would happen, and they kind of split up into various groups based on their similarities to each other and went their own way, and a bunch of them set up Shady Sands, and that then obviously progressed to become the New California Republic. And we also encounter the Mormon Church, which is very prevalent in Utah and in Nevada, and that seems to have persisted into this post-war era with the New Canaanites, at least until Caesar sent the Whitelegs to raze the city to the ground. Not great for them. But there's a lot of mentions of the Christian Bible in the games. So one of the big examples is here in Fallout 3, the quote about the waters of life is brought up at several points in the main story of Fallout 3, and the numbers that relate to that passage in the Bible is actually the code for starting the purifier, and it was your mother's favourite quote, and your dad had it on the wall, which was a safe, and all these things. So that one keeps coming up in the main story, so it's quite interesting. And then we're here in Rivet City at the Church of St. Monica, and St. Monica is kind of built on Catholicism. It's based on Catholicism, and Father Clifford, so he's a priest, and he considers himself a priest that you would expect to see in the Catholic Church, and he does perform sermons here and Mass on Sundays, and he does read a very interesting retelling of the story of St. Monica. So the story of St. Monica is that she cast her son out and then eventually reconciled with him and managed to convert him to Christianity. And the Fallout edition has St. Monica as being the daughter of two ghouls, which is a kind of miraculous birth because ghouls aren't supposed to be able to reproduce. And then she was eventually sold into slavery and lost her son. She spent 4 years searching for him. And when she found him, he was a slaver, and she managed to convince him to repent his wicked ways and come back to being a good person again. So, they've taken the story of St. Monica and they've Falloutified it to make it kind of relevant, I guess, to the world that we're currently living in here. And if you visit Diamond City, they're a bit more non-denominational, so there is a chapel there which is called the All Faiths Chapel, run by Pastor Clements, but it caters to all beliefs or lack of beliefs, and it provides space for contemplation, for prayer, meditation, as well as providing marriage services and things like that. But there's not one specific kind of faith or belief system in that church. It's just really a space for people to find a bit of peace potentially, and to think about things and to reflect and stuff like that. And the pastor provides counsel and provides marriage services and all the kind of things that you'd expect. So quite an interesting one there. And I say this is the Church of St. Monica, so they've got park benches as pews and things like that. Really, really interesting. And also a teddy bear. Am I allowed in here? I'm probably not allowed to steal his teddy bear though. Oh, the donation box. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the purposes of the church, is that you can boost your karma by donating caps to the church and things. That gives you a wee bit of extra karma, which is nice if you want to balance out some of the not so good things you did, which it's kind of like going to confession, I guess. That you say, oh no, I did these bad things and I'm really sorry. So there you go. That's kind of how that would work. So yeah, very interesting. But we're going to head west now, because there's a few interesting things that have developed on the other side of the country that related to this topic. So we're going to head west. So here we are. We are in Zion Canyon, and we're at the Sorrows Camp to talk about the next kind of form of religion that has occurred. So in the West, what happened is that a lot of different tribes kind of developed and grew up out of those who survived and those who left the vaults in the West Coast area, and sort of between California and Utah and Nevada and all these places. So we had a bunch of different tribes that kind of grouped together, and they developed their own kind of set of beliefs and their own kind of cultures that they built up around their beliefs and around their kind of locations and things like that. So it's not a wild concept really, because that's how pretty much all religions kind of started out, as people looking for an explanation and looking for a way to find hope and to kind of improve their lot in life and develop a moral code that suits the society and all that kind of thing. So it's kind of how most of these things get started, as a group of people that group together and they develop their own shared beliefs and things like that. So there's quite a few examples. So the Vipers are worth mentioning, because they're a faction that have been intended to be an important faction in Fallout, in the classic Fallout games and in Fallout New Vegas, and then they keep kind of getting cut down. They do actually appear in Fallout New Vegas, but they're not really anything more than just another type of raider. But their backstory is that they worshipped snakes, particularly vipers, unsurprisingly, and they used the venom of pit vipers on their weapons. So they would have potentially kept pit vipers and milked the venom from them, which is something that you can do with a venomous snake, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you do know exactly what you're doing, because obviously these kinds of snakes can be quite dangerous, and snakes are very fast, so if they're going to bite you, they're going to be quicker than you. That's just how snakes work. And I say this as someone who loves snakes, so don't get me wrong. I know a lot of people are scared of them and find them off-putting, and the venomous ones obviously are dangerous, but I'm very much a fan of snakes. I've treated quite a few in my career, and I think they're very interesting animals, but that is why they called themselves the Vipers. And there is a bit of backstory in the kind of lore that never really got included in the games, but was kind of at one point developed and intended to be included. Then another one that I think is really interesting, so we're here at the Sorrows Camp in Zion. So this group are a group that came from a bunch of survivors that ended up here, that Randall Clark did what he could to protect. So So the Sorrows here, they believe in the father in the caves, which is Randall Clark, and I will link the video that I've done. I have done a biography about Randall Clark, the survivalist in Zion. He's very, very interesting. He's got a really long, harrowing story, but it does go into a lot of detail about how this all came about and what he went through, and it's a fascinating story that I think more people should know about if you're a Fallout fan, because it is really, really interesting. But they do avoid going into man-made structures and find it taboo to go into, like there's the like cabins and the huts for the rangers and all that kind of stuff. So they avoid going into that because they believe it's not safe. And they also avoid going into some of Randall Clark's caves out of respect for him. So definitely worth a watch, or worth just going into Zion Canyon and going into find these caves and find the survivalist caches, find all his journal entries, because it's a really, really interesting story. Highly recommended. But what he did was he gave a lot of help to these young people. They were basically kids that had escaped from a vault, and he left medicine for them, left food for them, even left a book for them with instructions on how to hunt and how to survive. All his survival knowledge, he left that to them. And then Daniel and Joshua Graham, who were New Canaanites, came along here with their own religious teachings, and instead of rejecting it, the Sorrows adopted it. So they took the Mormon teachings from Daniel and Joshua Graham and they conflated it with the beliefs they already had. So they've kind of combined the two things together into their belief system instead of outright pushing away something new. They've kind of conflated it all together, and they seem to be pretty happy with that situation. So I think that's absolutely fair enough. He's a dead horse. I think that's absolutely fair enough, and I really like it. And I like, they've got the kind of paintings and things. So when you're walking about Zion, you'll maybe see some buildings and things that have white handprints all around them, and that's kind of marking them as taboo. So the tribals don't go in there. So, yeah, very, very interesting. But there's plenty of people out in the Wasteland that don't really care about any of this, and if it's not for you, it's not for you. That's fine. Faith can be a lifeline for people, but for others, it's meaningless, and there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, there are some fun new religions that have emerged since the end of the world that you can try out. They may or may not be cults, but you can put your faith in the talking tree or Atom's Glow. You can even start your own if you really want to. Why not? So let's have a look at some of the New World religions. Oh, there's Daniel there. So yeah, you can see obviously he's dressed very differently to the tribals. But yeah, so let's go and have a look at some of these New World religions that may or may not be cults, and we're going to head back east for that. So I will see you over there. So there's nothing quite like an apocalypse to bring out the most interesting parts of society. So while some of the pre-war religions have persisted into this new world, others have embraced new faiths with mixed results. So the earliest one that we can find is the Children of the Cathedral in New California. So this was a doomsday cult that was led by Morpheus, and it was based near the Boneyard, which is LA, Los Angeles. And it basically served as the public facing front for the Unity, which was the Master's plan for improving humanity. And when the Master was defeated and generally his stronghold was blown up, they pretty much disappeared. But this group basically believed that the nuclear bombs were a cleansing holy flame that cleared out the old world to make way for the new world order and a new and improved version of society. So that was kind of the goal, and that's what happened. And the Children of Atom are kind of similar in that regard. So they do worship the nuclear fire as well, and they believe in an entity called Atom. So they seek division by spreading radiation around and detonating nuclear weapons so that they can achieve division. And they have kind of spread across the Wasteland, and their interactions with societies is fairly varied. So this man here that's chatting pretty much constantly, so he's here basically all day preaching at the undetonated bomb. So this is Confessor Cromwell, and he basically started the Children of Atom. But he is peaceful. He's just here. He's like one of those guys you see in the street that's just preaching Bible passages. He's just sharing his message, but he's not dangerous to anybody. And you can see that people do, some of the megaton settlers and the NPCs here, they do come and listen to his sermon and, kind of pay attention, although how many of them actually believe it is hard to say. And he's a bit kooky, but generally harmless. Unfortunately, there's another group of them that kind of separated from Confessor Cromwell, led by Mother Curie III, which is a great name choice there because of Marie Curie. And they call themselves the Apostles of the Eternal Light. So instead of seeking division, they seek enlightenment by becoming ghouls or by dying from radiation sickness, whichever one happens first. So they kind of oppose this concept of division that Confessor Cromwell talks about. Yep, good timing there. And so among the Children of Atom, there is different opinions on whether this bomb here should be allowed to be detonated and if that's what Atom wants to happen or not. So, you do come across some different opinions on these things even among the actual Children of the Atom, where extra sects have kind of split off. Again, that's nothing new with religions, because look at Christianity, there's 40 million different forms of that. It happens in a lot of these religions that, you've got different sects that potentially do things slightly differently, have slightly different beliefs and that kind of a thing. And over the next 10 years, as we know, the Children of Atom kind of grow and spread, and they pop up in other locations, especially the Commonwealth. So we're going to head over there to chat about some more of the Children of Atom and what happens in the next decade from this point and where they end up. So I will see you over there in just a second. So in the Commonwealth, there are several groups of the Children of Atom, and we can encounter some hostile ones in a couple of locations like the Kingsport Lighthouse, where they use radiation-based weapons like gamma guns and radium rifles, and they will attack you on sight. Yet there is also a substantial and peaceful group that are living here in the Glowing Sea, apparently without issue, and worshipping Atom's glow, where it is kind of at its best. As you can kind of see and hear, there's just a permanent radiation storm happening in this big crater. So this is the crater of Atom, which they seem to see as a kind of promised land from their deity, that this is the place for them. So they've come to this big crater, which is obviously where one of the big nukes hit, that's created this massive radioactive crater in the Glowing Sea, and they just live here and apparently are fine. But elsewhere up in Maine, in Far Harbour, Confessor Martin arrived, and he travelled here from Washington DC, it seems, from the capital Wasteland, and they believe that that radioactive fog on the island is also a sign from Atom, and that it was a kind of promised land for them. So they've kind of settled in there, and they want to own that place because they believe that the fog is a message from their deity that this is the place that they should be. And they ended up settling in a nuclear submarine that is kind of stuck into a dry dock, which they dubbed the Nucleus. It's where Dima was originally living, and they kind of got on well and then didn't. Especially after Confessor Martin left and Tectus became the leader of the group, calling himself the High Confessor. And having a handful of overzealous zealots didn't hurt his rise to power. And they want to detonate the submarine to bestow Atom's gift upon the island. So division to the highest degree possible is their goal, so that Atom's holy fog can spread across the world, or something along those lines. So with the Children of Atom, their core belief is that Atom is a creative force, not a destructive force. So splitting the atom, which we know of as nuclear fission, would create a new universe that is unified in Atom's glow, otherwise known as radiation. So a lot of them do seem to have an innate resistance to the harmful effects of radiation. The fact that this community, because there's quite a few people about, as you can see, are living here, and I mean, a lot of them have lost hair and things like that, but most of the sections of the Children of Atom do at least allow you to use Radaway so that you can survive in the radioactive places that they like to live. So for those who are unblessed with the gift of immunity to radiation, they will allow you to use things like Radaway so that you can continue to worship Atom without dying. And it might all sound a bit nuts, and there's certainly cases where the Children of Atom have done harm to people by, for example, secretly irradiating the water supplies. So there was a group, the Apostles of the Enlightenment, the group that were in Springvale after you complete the main story in Fallout 3, and they were taking the water supplies for Megaton from the Brotherhood, irradiating them, and then passing them on. So they were secretly making the water radioactive to convert more people, and like forcibly baptizing people and things like that. So there's definitely some cult-like behaviour going on, and that can become dangerous. You know, cults by their very definition are a step beyond religion and a step beyond religious fanaticism, where things do become dangerous. And there have been many of these sort of incidents in history, some of which were just a pure scam to make a lot of money off of people, that kind of thing. But, you know, seeing and recognising cult-like behaviour is a very important way to avoid getting dragged into one of them. But people are always going to look for explanations and answers when something happens. So, you know, something that they don't understand, that's how religion came about, really, is that people wanted explanations for why things are the way they are, who created this world, who did this, who you know, designed it, you know, why do we exist, all these questions that, and a lot of people will use some form of religion in order to answer those questions, which is fair enough. And that's how these kind of beliefs do tend to kind of come about. And people are going to find some kind of answer that works for them in some fashion, even if that requires blind faith in an unseen entity, whereas other people might prefer to actually have rational explanations for things and don't have that. And I say there's a lot more of that kind of stuff that I could mention. So you can come across the Habologists in a couple of games, actually. So they started out in San Francisco, and you could encounter them during the course of Fallout 2. But by 2287, they have made their way over to Nuka World, and they are looking for a spaceship that's going to take them into space to where their promised land is. But they even let you join, so you can actually join the Habologists, and they give you these treatments to get rid of all the I can't remember what they call it, but you know, it's obviously a bit of a kind of play on Scientology and things along those lines, and I would say that certainly some chapters of the Brotherhood of Steel even show some very cult-like tendencies, especially I feel like that was depicted a lot in the TV show with the Brotherhood, you know, where they had their clerics and they were using incense and all these kinds of things that don't necessarily fit in with their kind of presentation as a military force, and their presentation as technology experts as well, that they're finding hanging on to old technology, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I definitely feel like there is some of that kind of behaviour in a lot of these groups, and the Brotherhood definitely show some of those signs as well, from what I have seen. But I think that covers most of what you need to know to survive in the Wasteland. It's a scary world out there, full of dangers, so keep your gun handy and maybe check out the videos that I've done on the various creatures so you know how to handle the monsters that are out there, as well. Yeah, so hopefully you find this interesting. I'm going to leave here because, you know, I'm taking, well, a lot of radiation about. It's definitely, I don't know why anybody would want to live here, but you do you. So hopefully you found this whole series interesting. Just to kind of make you guys aware, after, now that this series is wrapping up on a Thursday, I'm going to be changing things a little bit, just for basically to make things a bit easier for me, and to make sure that I can actually bring you the best quality content that I can do. I'm going to stop uploading on a Thursday every week. So my main upload days will be Tuesday and Saturday, as they are just now. And instead of having a video on a Thursday, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting work into some interesting longer form kind of video essays about various topics. So things that are big enough for a long form video, but not quite big enough to turn into like a full series or anything like that. So my aim is to put together one of those a month, and that way I'll have a bit more time to dedicate to making sure that I can bring you the best videos that I can possibly make, and make sure that I'm not just rushing to churn out content that isn't up to the standard. You know, I've improved a lot in various aspects. I've still got a lot to learn about editing videos and sound and things like that, but I do think things are getting better, and I want to keep working on that. So that way, 2 videos a week plus a big video essay once a month, hopefully, is the plan going forward, so that I can make sure that I'm bringing my A game and bringing the best quality content that I can for you guys. But I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I do love to hear your thoughts in the comments, but keep things respectful, because there's a lot of different belief systems out there, and these kinds of things can be very personal to people, so keep that in mind, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.